Democrats, you don't have this in the bag. A lot of these pro-Palestinian supporters, young voters, voters in general, are seeing how incompetent Biden is. And while Biden is still the president, Kamala, you're still the VP, and things aren't looking too well. Things ain't looking too hot because as the crisis in Gaza continues, we have this. Pro-Palestinian protesters interrupt Biden event. The death toll is apparently, 40,000? Now, according to the Lancet report, it's 186 to 200,000. With starvation, bombings, disease running rampant, that number is much higher than 40,000. So let's play this video. Shout out again the case study QB.
The idea was that we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men and women are created equal in endowed and so on. That's not.
What about Palestinians, sir? But even then, even quoting U.S. law, he screws it up.
These truths to be self-evident. That all men and women are created equal in endowed and so on. That's not. Including Palestinians. Including Palestinians.
All right, pro-Palestinian protesters interrupting President Biden during his appearance with Vice President Harris in Maryland yesterday with Gaza.
And Harris was there. Did Harris interrupt and say, he's speaking?
Ceasefire negotiations starting up again in Qatar, staking out a position on the Israel-Hamas war has, of course, been a significant political challenge for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job.
Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
The Palestinian death toll from the 10-month-old war just crossed 40,000 people and rising. Let's bring in Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs in the Obama administration. Joel, good morning. Always wonderful to have you on the show. So let's dig into these talks for a second, because I mean this ceasefire, a more durable ceasefire, and of course hostage release has been something that President Biden has been working on now for months. I think he promised back in March that it was just days away, and then it never materialized. Now Hamas is not at the negotiating table. Where do these negotiations stand, and is there any reason to have hope?
By the way, again, folks, just a quick reminder. Here's your pal, Stephen King. I'm speaking. This isn't going to work for you, Democrats.
That they might go somewhere.
Yeah, Casey, it's a very elusive negotiation, as you say. A framework has been agreed to by all the parties, meaning the 3 steps of a hostage exchange for Palestinian prisoners and increasing relief and aid into Gaza, as well as trying to get a long-term plan. But they're stuck on the details, and the details are what matter. It's always what matters in Middle East diplomacy, the execution of the deal to make sure it works. While Hamas is not there, and you're right, and they should be at the table. Their decision to not go is a loss. Nonetheless, there was positive movement yesterday, so there are still hopes that despite that Egypt, Qatar, and other allies in the region can push Hamas into agreeing to a deal, a hostage exchange, and get some relief to the Palestinian people and some security for the Israelis. But yeah, this has been elusive, and it is still in that elusive moment.
Where is Benjamin Netanyahu in all of this? Because there was some reporting from the New York Times this week that he possibly is basically dragging his feet, trying to drag things out.
Yeah. Bibi Netanyahu, he has options at this moment. Israel has conducted serious and impactful strikes on leaders of Hezbollah and of Hamas. It gives him political space at home to cut a deal, to say, I've taken out the leadership and I've made us safer. He's not grabbing.
Yes, well, the scumbags talking. You want what people are doing? Further on discussing this. Discussing if VP Harris has more credibility with the Gaza genocide protesters and how it will affect the DNC convention. She's not going to take too kindly to there being pro-Hamas, hummus language at these protests.
So, Joel, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see next week at the convention in Chicago, because certainly when President Biden was at the top of the ticket, the anticipation of pro-Palestinian protests was a very significant one. We are expecting tens of thousands, maybe over 100,000 people to go to protest this convention with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. How has this dynamic changed with her at the top of the ticket? Does she have more credibility with those groups? And what do you expect at the convention?
Yeah, Casey, I think for Kamala Harris, she is seen as a figure who has deep empathy for the Palestinian suffering right now, as well as a strong track record of support for Israel. And so the tone is calmer. There's a recognition amongst those who are very concerned about what's happening in Gaza that she is an opportunity to engage. That said, she's not going to take kindly, and none of us are going to take kindly, including me as an American Jew. I won't take kindly to there being pro-Hamas language at these protests. And the real concern is that rather than a rally instead of protests, you try to call for an end to the war that's going to degenerate into that kind of name calling, that kind of hostility.
Oh, name calling and hostility. Oh, the feelings, the feelings, the feelings. Oh, people are going to be crying. How sad.
And that could put the vice president into an awkward position as well of having to push back against that. That should not be the goal of the protest. The goal of the protest should be about getting the line across that there needs to be a ceasefire and calm in the region and not antagonism towards Israel. But they do have now in her a team, as well as her, somebody who understands the suffering and understands the need for that to end.
Yeah. Did you think she responded fast enough when there were Hamas symbols painted on statues here in D.C.?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Again, look, these people at the DNC convention, it's going to be crazy. But I want to pull up this article here from Block Club Chicago. Palestinians promise largest protest ever as DNC descends in Chicago. In Chicago, Palestinians and organizers in Chicago have protested in the streets every week since October, demanding an end to the war in Gaza. They've camped out on college campuses and pushed for divestment in Israeli companies and called for a ceasefire in city council. Now, as the Democratic National Convention descending on Chicago next week, Palestinians will bring their message of Palestinian liberation to a national stage, hoping to move Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democrat nominee for president, and other key Democrats to back a ceasefire. That's not going to happen. They're going to say it, but they'll never follow through with it. There are planned rallies and marches throughout the convention, although organizers are pushing back against last-minute restrictions that ban stages, tents, sound equipment, and portable bathrooms at their Union Park staging area. They got a lot of power behind them. Cook County, where Chicago resides, is home to the largest Palestinian population in the United States. It'll be the largest protest in the history of Chicago for Palestinian rights, specifically. So again, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed. That number is a lot higher, folks. Mostly women and children during Israelis' ground invasion and aerial bombardment of the Gaza Strip, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, cited by the United Nations. Again, this is following what happened on October 7th. Since October, nearly 2 million Palestinians in Gaza have been displaced, according to Amnesty International. Many are facing famine and spread of disease due to lack of clean water as bombs continue to destroy homes, churches, and schools and hospitals. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago will be held about 15 miles from the suburban Bridgeview, known as Little Palestine, an enclave filled with Arab-owned businesses, cultural and religious centers. Many of its residents immigrated there following the mass expulsion of Palestinians from what is now Israel in 1948. So there's going to be protests. There's going to be people there. And yet, what are these douchebags at CNN are saying? Oh, is Kamala's feelings going to get hurt? She's not going to take too kindly to seeing these protesters at the DNC convention.
I thought that was a really impressive moment. She came out very quickly the next day, or in the morning of, and said this is an unacceptable point. And that is the right narrative. It's important for Americans to protest when we feel that there is something to protest. But to descend into hate speech, propaganda that is essentially anti-Semitic, that has no place in these arguments, these protests, and she condemned it right away, while still maintaining the point that there needs to be a path forward for peace in the Middle East.
All right, Joel Rubin for us this morning. Joel, very grateful for you.
Yeah, no peace. And here's the thing, folks. I have no idea what's going to lie in store for us for the DNC convention. I don't know. I just don't know. But there's concern over possible unrest during next week's Democratic National Convention, as some business owners in Chicago's Loop are taking precautions. They're boarding up their windows and the doors, and it could be seen downtown. So I know there's a couple of guys from independent media that are flying in now, and it's a sad state of affairs that this is what's causing this. And the thing is, Democrats, maybe people wouldn't be afraid if you actually had some strong policies and actually, I don't know, maybe defended, the people who you want to be part of your coalition, but I guess not. One person, a person named Scott Shapiro, says, as we know, the city has a poor track record when it comes to protecting businesses. The looming unknowns ahead of next week's convention are why Shapiro said he knew he had to take precautions to keep his decades-old business safe. We felt it was more prudent to board up since our customers and their employers have told them to stay home throughout the convention for their own safety. That's why his downtown storefront, Sid Jerome on Clark Street, is shielded by plywood as thousands of protesters plan to descend on Chicago for the DNC. So there's going to be a bit of a uncertainty for the DNC convention. And Democrats, you're going to be stuck in the middle. Democrats, good luck with what you're going to do in the future. And as for the Biden-Harris event being interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters, it's still going to happen. People are still going to be speaking out. And Hard Lens Media, starting on the 19th all the way to the 22nd, we are going to be covering the DNC convention. We're going to be interviewing these protesters. We're going to be on the ground in the field like we should. And we're going to continue to push forward. But I promise you this, Democrats, your actions next week will define the future of this election cycle. You know, there's the old phrase of you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. But the thing is, to all the voters, to all the protesters out there who are critical of the Democratic Party, don't be lured in. They're only going to say things you want to hear. And as soon as the election is over, they'll reverse right back to that abusive spouse beating and hitting you, cheating and stealing from you, because nothing will fundamentally change if you submit yourself to the two-party system.